Terese Shanley's in the house today.
Hello, holla.
Oh, I love you. You're just such a bright, shiny little, beautiful, not little, beautiful light. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, so good. Yeah. How about
I'm
you?
so glad. It is so good. It is fall and it's beautiful, and we're rocking and rolling. We're riding the wave as times are shifting.
Absolutely. That's what
Well,
we're here to
that is what we're here to talk about today. So you are so good, and you really downloaded the fact that we really need to talk about this whole notion of evolution and waking up. And it's like, well, what is that? And
Yeah.
how do we even know, that we are moving from our egos to the place of soul? Like, how do we know that we are, and what are we even talking about?
Yeah. So, when you're waking up, quote unquote, or you're moving through an awakening, quote unquote, what does that mean? Well, you'll be able to tell by the symptoms because you're in deep suffering, somehow. So, things that are out of your control happen and bring you to a place, to your knees, where you are just kind of done fighting. You're done with the internal battle. And maybe it's something that's slow that happens over time. I mean, my awakening didn't happen all at once. My awakening was actually an awakening. I started getting insomnia after my kids were born. And, over 25 years, that'll bring you to your knees a couple times. When you've got 4 babies and, 4 children to raise, and, you're trying to work. But really what it is it's suffering. And it's suffering because it's human conditioning and limited patterns of thinking. And when we're in our ego, that's what we are doing. We are at war inside of ourselves, either in our thoughts or in our spirit, in our emotions. And that begins to show in our physical life somehow. And we just are out of alignment. We don't feel like we are whole, right? So we try everything we know how to try in our human conditioning, in our patterns of thinking. And when those aren't lined up, when they're in our ego, they're not going to make us feel whole, because we're looking for ourselves outside of ourselves.
Like, maybe in what ways? Could you give some examples of how some people, i.e. how we might be doing that or have done that in the past?
Yeah. Well, we all have it because we're all human, right? And so everybody comes to this planet to evolve their souls. And so, I think ego gets a really bad rap because it's always like, well, ego's the bad guy. And actually, ego's the one that brings us to the light. The darkness brings us to the light. And so what does that look like? It looks like we are suffering or struggling. So some common themes would be, you're looking for happiness outside of yourself. If I just get the right job, if I just can make more money, if I just find the right partner, you just name it. It's whatever you're looking for. If I can just have a full night's sleep and feel peaceful and good at all times, then that will be perfect. I'll be able to do everything. And it's really, it's a more intimate dance and an intimate relationship with yourself than just that, right? So you start to realize, so you try all these things, you move outside of yourself, you try to accomplish all the things. Like for me, I was like, okay, if I was the classic doer, if you will, had a million plates spinning, because that's how I got my self-esteem, was if I just accomplished that and that and that and that, okay, now I've checked all the boxes. Now I feel like I don't feel good, And why is that? Because it's an inside job. That's why.
Yeah.
You can't go from the outside in, you go from the inside out. And so that's when I started to realize that, you have this awakening of all of my answers are already within myself, but you don't come to that overnight. You're at war and at battle inside of yourself for so long, hitting your head against the wall,
Yes.
saying, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get my act together?
And once all that stuff on the outside that we've been seeking, you know, we've attained all the things that we thought would make us whole and feel like, you know, these amazing people that we actually are. After we get it all, or most of it, we still aren't there. And then that is like, well, gosh, like I did all that. I checked all those boxes and I'm still suffering. And then you are forced to go inside. Do you think that most people are in the process of waking up in this given time?
I really do. I think we're waking up. It's a global awakening, which is called ascension. And we have to. All the other paradigms, you know, we're rising frequency. We're raising our consciousness. What does that mean? We're rising in frequency and we're raising our consciousness. Well, again, this is an invitation. And if you don't want to take it, then you don't have to, but you won't find yourself. You won't find peace and wholeness. But what it means is, it just means a greater awareness, right? And so, you know, people say, well, I want to find myself. Well, that's what it is. It's finding the light within that you already are, that unfolding divinity of who you already are. And that's the name of my company for a reason. Because it's already there. Like, you know, it's like the old paradigm of I have to try, I have to work on myself. And really it's just moving from a 3D consciousness, which is outdated, right? Which is just a lower frequency, that now we're moving to a 5D consciousness. And it's just a greater awareness. And all that means is that we're moving into a heart-centered consciousness, a heart-centered awareness. And therein lies the path of alignment. And if you fight in your ego and you try so hard, all the tricks, you know, and it's not working and you're still miserable, you know, that's why, because you're still at war. And so what happens after you're at war for so long and you're just really tired of it? You're like, what's the common denominator here?
Like, isn't that the awakening? The awakening is,
yeah,
that's the awakening, when you're like, oh, it's me. Like, oh, you know, when you, like, back in the day, I feel like I was always, there would be like one or two people I was always out of alignment with. Like, it was, you know, I was in that blame and shame and her and him and somebody else. And I don't know how I got to the place. It was probably getting tired of, like, I finally looked, I was like, huh.
Yeah.
Like, why am I always out of alignment with people? Like, it's not them, it's me. And when we can take that full responsibility for ourselves,
yeah,
especially this process of the awakening. So, you know, when we talk about awakening, I mean, you know, it's not actually cliche. It's a beautiful thing. It's, you know, it is just, I think, like a lot of acceptance of just who we are and allowing. And I do think it's challenging to even get there. So, like, are there signs and symptoms that we might experience on this path? Like, because some of us might not know what you and I are even talking about right now.
Yeah, oh, totally.
And so I want to, like, break this thing down to, you know, the whole world is changing right now. That is an awakening.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter, like, what side of what you're on, whether you want a mask or this or that or whatever. The reality is the earth is speaking.
Yep.
The people are speaking. Like, you are seeing movements everywhere, like from fires to protests to, you know, viruses. I mean, this whole thing is getting lit up. So would you call this unearthing of the earth an awakening?
Absolutely. You know, this is all the ego coming up, all the darkness coming up that's not working, that needs to shift into a higher vibration to work. So it's just a clearing. And so it's, you know, it's really counterintuitive when you think about what you need to do, what's the key that unlocks that door. And when you're seeing all of these fires and, you know, all of the stuff that's going on, COVID, Black Lives Matters, it's like, this is the hurt, this is the wound that needs to come up to be healed. And we have great compassion for that. And the way we look at it in the old paradigm would be to fight, 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 fight. and tell you're right and blame and go for it. And that's not working. And that's not going to work because the answer is love. And I know that sounds so cliche, but the actual answer is recognizing it, being aware of it, giving it compassion, breathing with it and through it, and giving it acceptance, and then putting love into it so it can pass. And it's, I work with teacher Matt Kahn, and he's amazing. And he says, when we have all of these uprisings and upheavals, people want to walk away from it. They want to, put a big red X through it and say, no, I don't like that. That upsets me. And really the new paradigm is thank you. Thank you for revealing yourself so that the healing of the world can take place now.
That is beautiful.
Because we have a choice. And it's the people who are going to stand up and wake up to this awareness, this higher consciousness in the heart center of saying, yeah, this is actually a problem. And yes, we are human beings and we are all one. And that really does hurt. And that is not in alignment. And so what's going to fix this? What's going to fix this is this acceptance and surrender to the higher power of love that's going to come in and do it. But we have to choose it.
Oh, we have to choose it. That's the beautiful thing. We have a choice.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the global, which I am so all about, like, we got to heal this world. However, we can't heal the world until we heal ourselves and like really go within. And, I guess I have some questions, like, in this process of awakening, and you said, you were challenged with your sleep. And it wasn't just that you had 4 young children, like you knew that there was something happening within you. You had a wake-up call on some level. So can we have physical symptoms, whether it's, insomnia or maybe an illness or,
absolutely
mental imbalance?
Yeah. So, anxiety, depression, a physical ailment that won't leave, that's trying to talk to us through our body. And we're not listening because we're trying to fix it from the outside in. And all the doctors that we've hired aren't working. It shows up in mind, body, spirit. Like it just shows up in some way, but mostly it's anxiety and depression, because that is the actual ego unraveling and returning back to the light. So if any of you out there are experiencing, I'm not saying don't go to a doctor and find help at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to bring some understanding to, we're talking about, working on an esoteric level with, moving from ego to soul. It's the process of the darkness unraveling into the light. And sometimes it shows up in anxiety, insomnia, depression, anger, lots of anger. And so if we're not bringing, what that can look like as well is any form of any form of worry, anticipation, or regret. And those are the things that Matt Kahn teaches, that if you're in any of those, you're in ego. Right. And so the way through that is through a mindfulness practice, a heart-centered acceptance and loving kindness practice for yourself and for others. And so, it evolves into the release of the blame and shame game, right? Because that's a game of the ego, right? So if you're in regret and looking back at the past and saying, why didn't that work out? That was their fault or whatever, that's where you're incubating an ego. And again, I'm giving Matt all the credit for, this language, because I'm a student of his, and I can relate to it because it's exactly what you experience when you're going through it. But yeah, and then after you move, you become aware of the fact that you're in this battle with yourself, or in anticipation, worry, fear, or regret. Then you're like, okay, everything I'm trying is not working. So I'm going to try a different way. So I started doing yoga. I started doing meditation. I went into creative meditation. I found the peace within And it was the doorway that opened that was an aha moment, like, wow, okay, there's a whole different world in here. And that's the world of your soul. That is your divine source. And when you align with it in any way, and sometimes this happens instantaneously for people, say they get in a really bad car accident, or they lose their job, or they're in a horrible divorce, or, you know, horrible tragedies can happen and people can awaken instantly. And that's really painful. I mean, I've been going through mine for 25 years. And so that's like, you know, that's a slow process of awakening, and that's doable, even though at times it seemed like it wasn't. It just takes a tremendous amount of compassion and understanding and acceptance. And then the next step after that is surrender. And that is a whole different ballgame. That's a whole nother podcast.
That is, we should talk about that next month. I love it.
Yeah. That's just, you know, realizing that there is a source that is bigger than you and that has your back.
No matter what you call it, the reality is that it exists. So might as well lean into whatever it is.
You can call it love, the universe, God, whatever you want.
Sam. call it whatever you want. So you mentioned something earlier, you know, about, as you know, the ego, you know, as you're awakening, that can manifest in, you know, physical symptoms, mental health issues, anxiety, that sort of thing. And what to me that is that the ego, we don't need to be afraid of the ego, as you said, and the ego is really a great tool, but that's also the ego, parts of the ego dying, and the ego is not interested in dying. And so it brings up all the fear and the worry, and it wants to hold on for dear life, because God forbid you turn up the light on the ego and it goes away. So, and here's the thing. The other piece too is that we are human. And so, as you said, like, some people have these instantaneous awakenings, where it's like a real jolt, like the car accident, the illness, the this, that, the other. Others of us, you know, are on the journey for our whole life. And even those of us who have that jolt, we are always on the journey of awakening. There is no, I think, beyond the body, like once you leave the body, you're still on that journey. God only knows what it is. And I'm assuming it's going to be a real magical adventure. I'd like to prolong that for quite a while. But, you know, I want us to like really share that, like, we are human, and this is why we actually came here, is to wake up. And if we're here during this time right now, this was predestined. Yes. We are here for the reason of bringing in this new light. Yes. And, you know, it's an honor to live in this time and to make that choice for love. It's a total honor. I agree with you 1,000,000%. You know, I have had a lot of people, and I'm not dissing those people that I love, who are texting me or calling me or saying, you know, like, what in the name of God, like 2020 sucks and 2020 is effed, and, you know, blaming 2020 is like the new mean green monster. And I am going to challenge all of us to stop being mad at 2020 and hating on 2020 and saying, thank you, 2020, because this is my opportunity to rise and to evolve. So 2020 came here swinging and knocking on your door so that you will get up off your booty and do your work. And the good news is, when I say get up off your booty, you gotta actually sit still and be still. And to your earlier points, you were going to share some ways that people can, you know, it's like what do I do if I'm having these inner promptings, or I'm feeling myself changing and I don't know what it is, and it feels scary, because we are changing, our energy's changing, it's going to change our body and our mind. I mean, our soul is something that we have to get to know. Yeah, it's happening. It's just a matter of how you respond, because really, you know, it's happening, like it's already happening. So it's like, you can't just, you know, and this is what we learned through the process of working with ego, and then the journey from ego to soul, is that you can't control things that are not in your control, right? But you can make a choice to
see them differently, to work with them differently, and to bring it into a more heart-centered space. And so, yeah, that's what we have to do. That's exactly what we have to do. So how does that look, right? So if people are having awakenings and they are wanting, to move within, and they have an inkling that that's probably the answer because everything else they have tried is not working, a spiritual practice every day, moving and sitting in the power is what, I've been taught, is that you sit in your own essence and your own power because you are the light, that the divine is within you. It's not outside of you. So this is the most important relationship you're ever going to have your entire life, is the relationship with yourself, right? And getting to
Amen.
know your ego and getting to know its patterns and, offering it to move into the light of your soul, the light of the divinity that you already are. Like that just doesn't happen overnight. So, a daily spiritual practice of meditation, prayer, whatever faith you have, now's the time. And there's many faiths out there. I mean, I know what mine is, you know what yours is, but it has to be a personal preference. That is a must. That is knowing that there's a higher source than just us. And therein lies the surrender of surrendering your life to this infinitely intelligent source of love that has got your back. We just waste so much time in our life fighting that,
Yeah. Well, there's been so many constructs around it and programming around it. And I would implore the world to really go within and begin your practice, whatever that is, and get into your breath and your meditation. And if you need help, there are people like Terese all around you, that really can help you
on it.
Yeah.
I'm teaching it.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of years suffering. I mean, a lot of you out there feel like you're suffering. I understand. I spent a lot of years suffering, and, it wasn't pleasant. But it's what transmutes your ego into the light. And, here I am now. And then because of my surrender and my walk, I'm so gifted now to help other people. And that is such an honor.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is so amazing, and it's so cool and so truly right now, because whether, people believe it or not, it is happening. We are evolving. And as you said, and I think that is like one of the most powerful things is we have a choice. So you can make the choice now, or you can make the choice later. And really that surrender piece is where it all is, because that's the only way we can move forward, is if we let go. I mean, I have lived in the illusion that I'm in control for a really long time. And I have been on my spiritual journey since I was, like for real, like since I was like 15, and it has evolved, and I am a human with quite a few flaws, and I have come into more self-love. And also, like, I still look in the mirror and I'm like, ooh, girl, we need to work on that chin. Oh, I might try Botox for the first time. And that's not a bad thing. That's just like, that's like it should be coming from more of a place of self-love versus self-loathing or criticism. And so we have a moment to moment choice. Just because you're having an awakening and you might feel like you have evolved, which if you're on the journey, you have evolved. We have never arrived. And so let's get comfortable with that. And
I mean, our journey doesn't ever end. Like you said, I mean, even to the other side, like, I just don't think our journey ever ends as souls and as this infinite source of love. And so, I mean, for all of you out there who are like, oh my gosh, give me the next step, because I know I was there, self-study. So, when my clients come to me, I will always give them homework, and they're tools to increase your awareness. And so, reading, go out and get the books that you feel like you need to read. Go on Audible, find what resonates with you. Learning, we all learn from each other. We're not meant to go through this alone.
That is so true. And, that first step to self-love, which can look a million different ways, and people, self-care and self-love are very different. And as you said, this is all about love and going inside first to then be able to give it to the world, I think is the most important thing. This is so amazing and enlightening. And what's so great is that Terese will be with us every month to share, what she is downloading from the Spirit to help us all to shift and to grow and to move through this huge change with grace so that we can truly rise in our power and do the work we came here to do. So I'm super excited just to see what happens next. And if anyone has any questions for Terese, DM Terese at Terese_Shanley.
Yeah.
On Instagram. She's at unfoldingdivinity.com, and you can always check us out on IG, and we will get you in touch with Terese. But we are so excited to have you. She's one of our master teachers, and come 2021, this sister will be teaching you all about the ways through her courses. So she's gonna light it up. So thank you.
Thank you so much.